Hey everybody, welcome to Field of Dreams on NCBN TT. I'm Steve David, I'm your host. Today I talk Trinidad football as usual, and I have a special guest with me who has been with Ttfa for such a long time. He's the Director of Media and Communications, and help me welcome Shaun Fuentes. Welcome to set, Shaun.
Hello, Steve. It's a pleasure being here with you as always.
As always, Shaun, there is so little we've done in the last few years in football, obviously because of COVID and other things like that, but there's so much to talk about now.
Well, as you rightly said, I think the topic of discussion today is the way forward for Trinidad and Tobago football. And I think our life goals always includes or is based around moving forward, keep moving forward. How much forward movement have we had in the last few years? As you said, not much, but I think when you look back at where our football has, in a sense, I don't want to use the term declined in the last few years for obvious reasons. You're talking about COVID, normalization committee, Trinidad and Tobago dropping in the FIFA rankings, being knocked out in the early phase of World Cup qualification. It's been very difficult to really set a pathway forward in terms of rapid or steady progress. But what I can tell you is that, 2023, we've entered this year with a lot of anticipation and expectations as well. It's going to be a very hectic year for us. The various initiatives being taken by the Ttfa and the Normalization Committee to get Trinidad and Tobago football up and running again. Despite the fact that we have not had much international football for the fans to engage in or to have the opportunity to turn up to a stadium for the past couple of years, the activities have been on stream. So you're talking about at the Ttfa level, the development programs have been ongoing. We have what we call the high performance program, which is focused on the under 14, under 15 age group for both boys and girls. That program is being overseen by the technical director, Anton Cornell, and the coordinator, Paul Deckel. And that really gives us a chance to build for the future a little bit behind the scenes, because the public is not too aware of what is happening there. But we are pleased to say that we have a group of the 40 or 50 best players in that age group in the country being nursed, so to say, by our footballing educators and coaches. Next on the agenda for us, this is going to be a major one, is the U17 Men's World Cup qualifiers. That takes place in Guatemala in early February. Shaun Cooper is the head coach. He's at the helm of that team. And in that squad, you're going to find some of the more talented or the progressive players that would have come out of the SSFL, the Secondary Schools League. And we also have some talented players who are eligible to play for Trinidad and Tobago, coming from the US circuit and also parts of Europe. So that is next on the agenda. And just a couple of days ago, you would have seen, Steve, that the national men's team had a chance to run out against St. Martin in a friendly, so to say. It was not an official international friendly, but a game, a good opportunity for the boys to get some match practice ahead of their CONCACAF Nations League qualifiers. Two integral or two very important matches for us. March 24th away to Bahamas, and then at home against Nicaragua at the Dwight York Stadium in Tobago. Those two matches are must-win games for us. If we win those two games, we're going to top the group and qualify automatically into the 2023 CONCACAF Gold Cup and go back up into League A in Nations League football.
I'm glad you're here, and I'm excited for the viewers because they've got you, who has worn every hat almost in the Ttfa office. And also, I've seen a lot of people come and go.
Yeah.
But Shaun Fuentes is still here. And you have all the background and everything that we know about Ttfa that we could even think about. So I want to start really with what's this, because a lot of people want to know what's happened with Normalization Committee and our way moving forward into some kind of league football, because that is what's going to set up everything for our national teams. So before we get into national team, is there things about league football that we can expect, or are we anticipating good stuff, or whatever you can tell us?
Yes, Steve, I'm quite pleased to say that, as you mentioned, there's been that anticipation and that hunger to get domestic football at the top tier level back up and running again. We haven't had that, but I think I'm pleased to say that the Ttfa has been able to sanction some of the local competitions that you're seeing, which in a sense is amateur football, but at least the players are getting that opportunity to run out again. On the domestic, on the sort of professional front with regards to the National League, those talks have been in the air for quite some time. And as a matter of fact, this week on Wednesday, the Normalization Committee is going to be sitting with the executives of the National League. There's been a CEO who has been appointed to that league. Colin Wolf is the man at the helm of that league. He has some experience. And they're going to meet with some of the representatives of the membership for that league on Wednesday to kind of get down to the final details of this league and the format and everything that we want to expect for top-tier football in Trinidad and Tobago. That means now that the various clubs who we are accustomed seeing in the professional league and the Super League, they're going to have that opportunity now to obviously be on display once again. There are going to be two tiers in that league, a tier 1 and a tier 2. And I expect, based on what I'm hearing, that we're going to have league football up and running by April of this year, possibly just before. So that's good for us in that regard. And this league is also very important because we had meetings with CONCACAF in recent weeks, and they're very eager to have Trinidad and Tobago represented in the Caribbean Club Championship and as well the CONCACAF League and the CONCACAF Champions League. So we're going to be putting forward our competition, which will qualify at least the top 2 or 3 teams in the country for those regional competitions. I'm also pleased to say that a few days ago, late last week, you would have seen us announcing that the official National Youth League is going to be up and running again in March in conjunction with Republic Bank. So what we know as the Republic Bank Youth Cup is now going to be the official National Youth League of Trinidad and Tobago. And that is a massive platform, a massive forum for the development of youth football. Teams and clubs from all across the country, they always look forward to that every year. And they're going to be different categories from the U13s, U15s, U17s and U20s as well, both for the boys and the girls to have this opportunity to play. And what this will do as well, Steve, is that it gives our players that platform to be seen by the national selectors and the coaches. And with this respective league as well, what is going to take place is that the registration by clubs for their players, it has to be done through the FIFA Connect platform. So this means now that it's not just a simple process where a team comes into a competition and they bring you a hard copy of their players and their date of birth, and somebody holds that in the back of their trunk in their vehicle. All the official information on each player goes into a database. It has to be approved by Ttfa and FIFA as well. And it means now that the various academies, the small academies in the urban areas or the less populated areas of Trinidad and Tobago, if they have a player that comes out of the under 12 category or the under 14 and they move on to another club and then they get into the US and all of a sudden now they're playing in Europe, for instance, a player like Levi Garcia, those teams that would have, the club or the academy that would have started the development of this player, they're now in line for FIFA compensation. And that's why it's so critical to track the development and the progress of these players. And that's one of the things that the Ttfa is going to be offering clubs now with this official National Youth League set to start in March.
That could be another complicated issue down the road because...
Well, if it's not properly done and the process is not properly followed, then you run into problems. But I think what it's going to do is going to avoid problems that we already had in the past, whereby players are ending up in some of these clubs in the US and other parts of Europe, and then all of a sudden you find an official pops up at the Ttfa office saying, well, this is my player, and what am I getting for this? The development of this player, is any transfer fees involved? How can I benefit? I've put all my effort into developing this player with no sort of financing over the past 5 years, and now he's climbed the ladder, and what do we get for it? So hopefully now this is a situation that we can, look after and help the development of some of these smaller institutions in Trinidad and Tobago.
You mentioned the youth league, and the only one that I knew that we had was really the Pro League had under 13, under 15,
right,
under 17. So now you have a lot of them popping up. Even in Point Fortin, Field of Dreams has an under 14 league that we're running.
Right.
But I've seen all over Trinidad with under 17 now and under 19 and all that. How are we going to take control over that? And
well, I think in what we can expect and hopefully what will happen is that the Ttfa will continue to liaise with these various leagues. We don't want to stop these leagues from existing because it gives everyone the opportunity to play. But we are encouraging some of these same teams that are participating in those leagues to make themselves available to participate in the National Youth League, because they're going to be exposed to other things that may not be possible in some of these community leagues. And one of that being, obviously, as I mentioned, with the FIFA platform, it means that you're going to have more exposure now for the national selectors to see you. And you're definitely going to be part of the official league of Trinidad and Tobago under the Ttfa. And a major part of this as well, Steve, is that for the clubs and academies to be eligible for the Youth League, they're going to have to go through the safeguarding process, which is now very critical and it's important around the world. Now you're seeing all of these incidents popping up. So all teams and academies will have to pass through this process, which means that all their coaches and officials will have to have sort of a certificate of character, and they'll have to pass that test to be able to work with the youngsters.
Yeah, but I'm glad you mentioned about the Youth League, because that's where I think my heart is right now. And, you know, how are they going to run this? Is this going to be a big national league? I'm hoping not. I'm hoping not, because I don't want them to scrap what's in the south and what's in the north and what's in the east and what's in the west and what's in the central. I want them to, you know, maybe do an interleague thing, but have every league playing, because if you have 10 teams in every league, we have 50 teams.
Right. And I don't know if you've followed the history of the Republic Bank Youth Cup, Steve. A lot of these teams that we are seeing playing in some of the other leagues that are happening right now, these are the same academies and teams that are always hungry, and they're always participating in the Republic Bank Youth Cup. So we expect them to participate again in this official league that is going to start in March. And there's going to be football around the country. So there's not going to be one or two particular venues. Of course, now, because of the amount of football that we want to see played and the logistics to make things a little bit more simple, we're going to focus on some of the main venues, but you're going to have the opportunity, teams in eastern counties, Mayaro, Manson, and Sangre Grande, talking about Toco, Point Fortin, and all corners of the both islands, both Trinidad and Tobago, will have the opportunity to, you know, play football on a regular basis, and it's not going to be too difficult. So you won't have a team from Point Fortin having to go all the way up to St. Augustine or having to go into Diego Martin to play matches. We're going to try to make sure that each team has that opportunity to play at home, but also get the opportunity to play away from home as well.
I'm not sure, maybe that's went clean over my head, because Republic Bank Youth Cup is not like a weekend tournament or something?
That's how it normally would have been in the past, but now it's still going to be on the weekends, but it's going to be on a bigger scale now, because there are going to be more teams, and now there are more age groups that the Ttfa technical department, we're trying to set up the league to align us with what other countries are doing, and it has to be FIFA approved as well. So this is going to aid our development and our progression of these players, international teams, to prepare us for international competitions.
Okay. I would like to see how they're going to set that up, because I hope not like how the Pro League is set up with one team in South and one team in East. And I hope it's a bunch of teams, and then maybe the winners come out, or the two come out and play each other to get to the championship or something. But
yeah, and remember, it's different age groups as well. So you have from the U13s go right up, and we're opening it up for as many teams as possible. What Republic Bank have said to us that they're not going to refuse any teams as well. So they've asked us to work with some of these amateur or these academy teams who are not too versed in terms of registration process and the things that needs to be done. We're not going to refuse them. We're going to work with them to ensure that they pass or they're compliant with what the league expects of them.
Okay, good. That would be very interesting.
Yeah.
I think we need to spend some time sifting that out and making it right, because that is going to be the foundation of our programs moving up to the championship.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with you. And I must say as well that a lot of emphasis is being placed as well by the Ttfa through its coach education department. Now we have Rajesh Lachu, who is the head of coach education, and he's also the youth football director. He's been working very closely with Cornel and his team to ensure that most of our coaches now are certified. So you would have seen over the past year or so that the Ttfa has been having the C license and B license coaching courses. We have become the first country in the Caribbean to have a certified A license course that has been approved by FIFA and CONCACAF. So we are attracting coaches from other parts of the region, and that's all well and good because now we are, in a sense, aiding the development of our neighboring countries. But more specifically with regards to our coaches here in Trinidad and Tobago, who may not qualify for that A license course, they are now eligible and they are getting access to the C license and B license courses, which gets them up to a certain level to properly prepare our players for football at the junior level, and obviously, to make that transition into national football and international football.
I am glad they're doing that but what I would like to see with coaching, with the coaches and FIFA and Ttfa and whoever, is that every 2 or 3 years, coaches have to do like a refresher, like an update.
Correct.
Because I have seen some of the coaches that I am involved, looking at the teams now and stuff, and some of them need a little bit because attitudes and how they talk to the players and different things, I think it needs a little bit of work.
Yeah, you're quite right. I mean, football every day, Steve. Football is evolving. The way the coaches manage their teams, the work of the administrators, the players, and their techniques and how they prepare themselves.
Right.
It's changing as we speak now. Something new is happening. So it's important now, and I think that's why Cornel and his team, they've recognized this, and this is why they're emphasizing that our coaches need to update themselves on a regular basis, and we are trying to work with them and ensure that they have that avenue in which to achieve that. Sadly for me, what they've been lacking is that competitive, that football platform to actually have their teams in action, and hopefully that's going to change as we enter March, April now. So these coaches that we've been developing now, a lot of them are already assigned to some of these academies and teams. So now we're going to see what they're made of.
Okay, good. We need to take a break now, Shaun. When we come back, we'll get some deeper into some of that. Okay. Viewers, we'll be right back after the short break.
Current affairs.
Oh, what?
That's it. That's it.
Welcome one and all. I am Gigula, alongside my sidekick, Mr. Aruka.
Your partner in crime, Juliet.
And we are going to be live on NCBN on a social media platform near you. IG, Facebook, YouTube. We are going to be
sensational,
tantalizing,
thought-provoking,
dramatic,
educational,
real,
sometimes spiritual,
suspense,
political analysis,
drama.
Take no prisoners, Juliet. Don't forget that part. Coming soon.
20,000 can rise against we like zombies and Juve morning. They can't stop the garden.
Hi, join us for your movie classics on NCBN TT television network every Saturday at 10:30 a.m. with repeats on Wednesday at 10 a.m. Streaming live on Facebook and YouTube. NCBN Television, the #1 online television network, bringing you the classics.
Okay, welcome back, viewers. For the ones who are now tuning in, you're looking at NCBN TT. I'm Steve David. I'm the host of Field of Dreams, and we're with Director of Media and Communication, Shaun Fuentes. Shaun, your name is Puerto Rican, no?
Well, it has a bit of Spanish in it as well. My grandfather and his relatives, they have roots in Venezuela, so I have a lot of family who would have lived in Venezuela, older aunts and uncles, and I do have some family there still, and some of them have moved to Trinidad, and now are also in Venezuela, so it's a long trail, yeah.
Yeah, and let's get back to some football. So I am glad we're spending a lot of time into youth development, because I think that's our strength, and we have good youth that we're seeing coming up that would strengthen our senior team in the near future. And so that is kudos to you guys at Ttfa, Anton, and the group, and what they're doing and how they're looking at things. So I'm sure the viewers is excited about that. So we have the under 14s, we have the under 15s. You say the high performance program. High performance. Yeah. And then we have under 17 as well. Right.
So right now with the national under 17 men's team, as we speak, they are winding up preparations at home for the U17 qualifiers. This is the World Cup qualifiers.
Okay.
For the World Cup in Peru, that is going to be held later this year. Those qualifiers take place in Guatemala from around February 11th. So our national team, which is overseen by Shaun Cooper and his staff, they will depart these shores later this week. They're going to head to Jamaica for a preparation camp and then fly into Guatemala. It's a tough group for us, the US and Canada in our group. Our opening match is against Canada on the 11th of February. And then we play the US, and then the final game is against Barbados. The thing about the way the CONCACAF competition is structured now, the top 3 teams from the 4-team group will enter the knockout phase. So I think it's going to, hopefully, we can get good results against the US and Canada. Time will tell. But I think we have a fighting chance, because this particular group of players, as you mentioned, has some talented players from the local system. And then we also have a few players from England and also the US who are eligible to play for us. And they've already been in training with the squad, so Cooper is going to name his final team later this week for the competition. Once we get to that final game in the group phase against Barbados, I think it's going to come down to that match to determine which is going to be the second or third place team from the group into the knockout phase.
And I'm excited about that under 17 group. I think we have great players, good talent. We just need to get them the experience and the development to make it happen. This is a time at under 17 where we should open the door for them to run, and instead of stifling them. And sometimes we always feel like it's too soon, but there's players I see in the SSFL, the Secondary Schools Football League, that is ready.
Yeah, I want to believe with what you're saying as well, Steve, but I think what has plagued us and continues to plague us right now is exposure. And I'm talking about not just having a team in training and being able to play matches in Trinidad and Tobago, but getting on a plane, going into a different city, into a different environment, seeing how international teams operate, and just playing under different conditions. We've not had that, and it shows up when we get into the CONCACAF competitions. For different phases of a match, we can see where we may be able to be better than these players 1-for-1. But then when it comes down to the entire match itself and being able to adjust to different circumstances, we're not exposed to it. And sometimes that can be intimidating for our players. I've seen it years upon years now with every national team that we go out there into competitions. This calls for financing, because to get a team to travel to other parts of Central America or the US to be able to play, it's challenging. It costs money to do this. And of course, the financial problems that the Ttfa has been plagued with over the years. And hopefully now investors and people who really want to see football progress will be able to sit down with the Ttfa and say, we want to be part of this program. We want to be part of the efforts going forward. We can have the most talented squad in the CONCACAF, Steve. But if we don't have the exposure, we're always going to find ourselves having an uphill task when we get into competitions. Right now, for this particular U17 qualifying tournament, the likes of US and Canada and Costa Rica and Mexico, their teams have been playing, throughout the year against international teams, international club teams. They've been traveling. For this under-17 squad that we have departing later this week, for maybe more than half the squad, it's going to be their first time traveling outside of Trinidad and Tobago on a national team. And that is something huge that they have to now adjust to. And then you get into Guatemala, you're adjusting, you're having to settle to the new environment, new facilities, new climate. First time for them. It's the coach and his staff, they have a lot to do now to get these fellas, their frame of minds now, in place, in tune for international football.
Yeah, I wish we had a National Football Academy where we can bring in some of the ex-players to sit down and have conversations or do drills or teach some of the younger guys tricks of the trade. I'm saying this because I have learned much more sitting down and listening to the older players, Warren Archibald, Celso Figaro, Eric Cummins, or even Bobby Shukram and guys further back, because you listen to them and then some things click. It's like, oh, that's what we should be doing, or that's what we should do.
Yeah.
And plus the experience you get when you go out. So I think we need to find a way to have younger players hear the experiences of the older players. And another thing is, I think we need to do as well is the coaches play the game for the kids on the sideline. And that should not happen. They should leave them, let them play. Halftime you talk, and then let them go again, and let them try to work it out. But let them work it out on the field, not listening. I see kids playing, and then they have to be looking back at their coach because he's shouting something. I don't like that.
Well, I did observe, Steve, a bit of what you just said was done with the St. Benedict's College team in the recent SSFL, because we saw clips of some of the older players like yourself, the ex-players, in the locker room with these boys. And what you mentioned is it's a valid point, and I have seen it done, but only in spurts with our national teams. And this is why I always say that, despite the fact that people tend to say that a great player doesn't always become a great coach, I tend to disagree with that to some extent. Of course, they have to prove it with their results, but that's why having the likes of an Angus Eve at the helm of our national team, when I hear him speak and share his experiences as a past player in the locker room and on the training pitch, I love hearing these conversations, because I try to observe as well what the players and how receptive they are to his messages. We also have Denzel Theobald. He's working with the high performance program with the U15 boys. I mean, Denzel Theobald has played in a World Cup. You can't ask for more than that, in terms of hearing what he has passed through, his experiences, his techniques, and his advice as to what the players should be doing. I sat next to him for the match against St. Martin on Sunday, and just hearing him, talk about the match and seeing his reactions and hearing him say what he thinks should have been done, what the players should have done, things like this. I mean, this is an ongoing learning experience. So as you rightly said, if we can have more experiences of this, or more opportunities for players or ex-players to be in constant conversation or in the company of our younger players, it only augurs well for the football. And I think if we cannot employ them directly and put them on a payroll to be with the Ttfa on a consistent basis, at least set up windows where they can come into the program and interact with our players on a more regular basis. And to add to what you just said as well, I know growing up, when we were 12, 13, 14 years old, and the Shell team in Point Fun going out to play, well, who have older brothers, you go with them. Like I had my older brother Adam, I would jump in the bus with him. But there's other kids in the neighborhood. One of the players always have somebody. And we always travel with them and always talk to, and we hear them talking among themselves about the game, whether it's before or after. And I think now in hindsight, I think that helped in some way, because there was a time when we coming up there, we had
12, 14 players who is good enough to make any team at our age.
Yeah.
So, and we need to spend more time doing that. Is all I say all that to say that.
And what that means also, Steve, is I think we need to be playing more football.
Right.
A point was raised recently among coaches from the CONCACAF level who've been part of the A-licensed course taking place in Trinidad and Tobago. There's not enough opportunities for national teams to be playing. So we don't have what we used to be the Shell Caribbean Cup. So we have the Nations League, so you have teams from the Caribbean having to wait on these windows to play Nations League matches where they have to compete not just against the Caribbean teams, but also teams in CONCACAF. They're going to get that opportunity maybe 3 times for the year, if so much, 1 or 2 matches, and depending on how they progress. You don't have a Caribbean champion anymore, so you don't have that football for more Caribbean teams to be active every year. And then at the youth level as well, the various Caribbean teams, they have to wait until that cycle for qualification for the U17s or the U20 qualifiers. It's not enough football. So our players are not getting that exposure to, in a sense, write their own history or to be able to create more narratives or more stories to tell or to hear experiences from the ex-players. If the player doesn't have an opportunity to play locally with their clubs, then it's really not enough football to be playing. And as you rightly said, I think ideally our national under-17 team, before going into this competition against the likes of US and Canada in Guatemala next month, they should have already had at least 2 tournaments under their belts. Even if it means having to fly to another Caribbean country to play against Caribbean nations or to play a CFU Invitational Cup, that again would have given them exposure. I think CFU, I've seen in recent times, they've attempted to have, or they at least have had the U15 CFU tournament, but that doesn't take place enough. It's not on a regular basis. So one year it's the boys, next year it's the girls. So it means that you're missing a year or 2 players having to skip that opportunity to get international exposure. We need to have this on an annual basis. It's the only way that we're going to be able to develop our teams to compete with the rest of the world.
Okay, there is 2 things before we run out of time that I want you to talk about. So I'll give you freedom to talk about it together or however you want to talk about it. Is what's going to happen with our elite league, whatever you know about that, and secondly, also our national team going forward.
Well, what can I say about the National League? I know there is a lot of emphasis being placed on making this the Premier League of Trinidad and Tobago. And obviously they've looked at where we've gone wrong or things that we need to improve on based on what the professional league has been over the years. I think what is going to be important now is there has to be cohesion and there has to be collective efforts among all the stakeholders. There are going to be disagreements. You are going to have members who are not in agreement with what is being proposed, maybe in terms of the format of the league, the way the league is being funded, in terms of the structure of the league. We have to work this out. It's the only way forward, because at the end of the day, football is suffering, the players are suffering, because if we continue to delay and continue to have dialogue without purpose, then who is suffering? As I said earlier, what I can tell you is that there are concerted efforts to ensure that everybody's on the same page and that we have football up and running in the coming weeks. I think with the support of the government and also the support of FIFA, they've put all their support now behind the National League of Trinidad and Tobago and other stakeholders to come on board and see, we have to decide what we want out of this. It's either we just want to have a league for the sake of running a league, or we want to have a league with purpose that can serve the development of our football and for it to really be a feeder into our national teams for us to be able to compete at the international level. You look at the performance of some of the so-called underdogs or the less popular teams from the World Cup in Qatar, and each one of them, when you do your research and you follow their progress, it's not an overnight success. Some of these teams like Morocco and even Saudi Arabia, they didn't just put a team together, get through the qualifiers and end up in Qatar being able to perform at the level of which they did. You look at what they had at the domestic level, at their football association level, their development schemes. it's been a work in progress, and it's been properly planned and executed over time. And if we want to get there, this is what we have to adopt, that same approach. Of course, people are saying that, I'm hearing a lot of talk on the ground that if we cannot qualify for the 2026 World Cup, then we're no good, because the fact that the teams are being expanded and we don't have to compete with Canada, Mexico, USA to get into the World Cup, then we should automatically be there. It doesn't work like that. Because you have teams now that have been knocking on the door right in the Caribbean. You look at the likes of Curacao, Dominican Republic, they've qualified for the U20 Men's World Cup. It means that they're doing something. And they're preparing for the same, they're fighting for that same spot that we want. We have to get our act together, and we have to decide now, how are we going to design this league to fit into the overall scheme of things for us to get to that next level?
They're going to have real confusion in forming those two, because Super League, and they rightfully so, have a point that you can't just put all the professional teams in this elite league and then give them the second spot. They might have a few teams who could be part. So dialogue between those two leagues alone is a big deal, because they all think they should be there. And so I don't know how that's going to work. I know you direct media communications, but whatever you heard or figure might happen, I would love to hear.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's, again, as I said, a lot of concerted efforts are being made to really get things up and running. And I'm probably going to have more to say to you in the coming weeks, because, of course, the league is going to be launched pretty soon. And a lot of the plans and more information on the structure of the league, and generally creating a league that is also friendly for the fans as well, because we want the stakeholders. The fans are the biggest stakeholders. They have to be an integral part of this. It has to be an attractive product for them. All that is going to be laid out on the table in coming weeks. I know there's a very important meeting that takes place later this week, where a lot of these things are going to be finalized. And of course, I'm really looking forward to the Youth League as well, because I think that is really the platform for our football to go forward, along with the National Senior League. And of course, the programs around the national teams, it's going to be very critical as well, Steve.
Okay, we need to take a break now, Shaun, but when we come back, I would tell you why I think that structure that they want to run is not good. Viewers will be right back after this short break.
I come from a place where only happy people and pretty girl everywhere, yeah. I know life is rough, but we still a smile on we face, yeah. No matter how hard, man, we don't let tragedy face way. We could take strain, that's why when we testing, we just fed hard when we jamming, we just jam down when we drinking, man it's strong rum, eh. Pop a bottle right now when we testing, we just fed hard when we jamming, we just jam down when we drinking, man it's strong rum, eh. Pop a bottle, push up your hand, yeah. We see bodies we bad, push up your hand, yeah. God bless this land, yeah. So we go jam down, oh la la, so we go wind down, oh yeah yeah, so we go jam down. So we go wind down and in the air. If you're born right there in this land, where the vibes go and I say hand in the air. If you're born right here in this land, where the vibes go and I come from a place where even when it's tough, we just live it up, it's amazing. When the battle hard, we just pray to God for we safety. Yeah, I know that we safe, yeah. We gon' make it. Cause God is our tree name. When we testing, we just fed hard and we jamming. We just jam down when we drinking. Man is strong rum, eh. Pop a bottle right now when we
Okay, welcome back, viewers. Okay, Shaun, like I told you, when I come, I tell you why that I don't like that. I don't like the structure that is setting up, because it reminds me of the Pro League, and they already said 11 of the teams that was in the Pro League is qualified for the Elite League. So that already separates the Elite League, the Pro League from the Super League. And now, if they want to talk now to mix that, to make the mix, now you're going to piss off some Pro League team, and some of the Super League teams is going to be happy. But it still takes away going back to the community. And Super League is in the community, in their zone. Super League don't have teams all the way down here and there and there. They're kind of more around the arena. They have some separation, but I still think we need to go back to the community full time with the SFL, SFA, POSFL, NAFL, Eastern Football League, Central Football League, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think what you said there is a valid point, Steve, and people have been calling out for more community-oriented football in Trinidad and Tobago. I know there are challenges with that, which I don't know if at this point we have systems in place to deal with it. And one of that being the access to proper venues. Yes, the Super League would want to argue that we've had football in running for Super League and playing in the community venues, but in terms of venues being compliant with elite football and top tier football, I don't know if some of these venues will pass that compliance test in relation to what CONCACAF wants and what FIFA wants. Access to venues as well is a big problem and continues to be a big problem in Trinidad and Tobago football. And I can tell you based on experience, even at the Ttfa level, the Ttfa doesn't have sole ownership of a football ground. So yes, we have the home of football, but that still belongs to the sport company. So right now we're still juggling with the sport company to get access to venues for national team training, also the screening sessions for our U20 women that's taking place. Sometimes as much as we know sport company, they're working around the clock to make things accessible to us. We're getting confirmation of venues for screening sessions the day prior to the actual date. And this causes a conflict. It causes it puts a strain on the administrators and also the players to make themselves available for a training session if you're being informed on Friday for a Saturday session. What I know is going to happen, obviously now a lot of the fields are being used for cricket as well, and the UTT pitches are being used for cricket. The problem that we face is that a lot of these teams, or 90% of the teams that are involved in Trinidad and Tobago football, they don't have ownership of their own venue, or they're not leased out to the clubs, where the clubs have first priority preference for a footballing venue, because you always now have to fight up with something happening. Of course, now we're in the height of Carnival, so a lot of activities are taking place at some of these venues that you can't get access to, and that is a challenge. And I think that, to me, has been one of the biggest obstacles for us having more football at top tier level in the community. I've seen it being done in Point Fortin, where you have the community, you have the fans coming out because the actual venue is right there. How much of that can we have in Trinidad and Tobago? If you can name 6 more venues similar to that we can have, I'll be more than willing to have you come and sit with the organizers and see if we can plot a way forward for that.
Okay, I'll give it to you. Garcar Park.
When last have you seen Garcar Park?
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Right. The venues are there, the location is there, but in terms of accessibility and it being ready for football, who's going to fix Garcar Park?
They need to.
Right.
I'm saying.
You're right.
They need to. The sports, all of these facilities are owned by the sports company or whatever. So they need to fix Garcar. They need to fix Palisade Velodrome. They need to fix Faizabad. They need to fix Skinner Park is there. I'm talking with Salt. Yeah. I'm talking with Salt because I'm from there. Yeah. I know. And then in Port of Spain League, they used to have a lot of the games in the Savannah. Right. You can get 10 teams in that Savannah.
And you're right about that, because that point was raised in the meeting with the Republic Bank about the National Youth League. And actually there are some thoughts being put behind that to have a lot of the matches in the youth league being played at the Queen's Park Savannah, because we try to visualize it as well. Imagine on a Saturday or Sunday you're around the Savannah and you're seeing 4 and 5 games being played. Exactly. It's a beautiful sight, and it's accessible to the persons on the street as well.
Right.
So we're working on that.
So there is, I mean, they're just letting these fields that they used to have back in the day go down the slopes. Yeah. Yeah. And that is our problem. Our problem is just to maintain these fields. And they have CPEP, and they have all the different community work groups that could do that.
I think for that, all it requires, as we've said before, is proper organization, proper dialogue to actually put systems in place, which I think you agree is sorely lacking in our system. There's no accountability for these things. Unless it benefits the individual, nobody wants to make the effort to make that happen. But again, if we look at the bigger picture and we're all working towards a common goal, and people can understand that, hey, this is an opportunity for me to be part, persons can see this as their contribution towards Trinidad and Tobago's efforts to qualify for a World Cup. But if we don't think that way, Steve, it's not going to happen. And I think that is lacking right now.
I could give you another way that you can get it done. You can, if you said we have 20 fields and we're giving it to 20 teams that would maintain it and upkeep it for football,
which is
you
what
would have 100 people.
And I spoke about that a short while ago, right?
Yeah.
Where I said that I think most of our clubs or our teams now, they need to be given that responsibility or that opportunity to have at least part ownership of these venues.
Right.
And they're gonna invest the time into it, of course.
They will. The players and all would come out and help you, just to have your own field that you don't have to run and hope a field is available.
And right here in the Caribbean, you see in places like Dominican Republic, Jamaica as well, a lot of these community fields have been made accessible to the clubs, and the pride that these people put into maintaining the venue, because they know it's going to benefit their club and their community, is second to none. And hopefully we can develop, it has to be part of the culture as well. We have to develop that in Trinidad and Tobago, and it has to start at some point.
And again, I always go back to back in the day. Back in the day, in every little community, we cut out a little space in somewhere that we play football in, whether it's all dirt. But you don't find the kids now, and we're not giving them the responsibility to do that. You don't find they want the biggest stadium to play in, when playing on the little dirt ground in your community helps you a lot better than trying to be in the Hazy Crawford Stadium playing football.
You're correct. You're right about that.
So those are the cultural things we need to bring back, and get enforced to make things happen. So I think we want to be a professional before we even learn to play the game. So we have to have everything at our leisure. Otherwise, as a kid, I'm not going to do it. And they don't come out and do it. But let them do it.
Yeah, I agree with you. But again, we have our responsibility to ensure that the proper systems are in place, and in terms of compliance with these clubs, and just making them ready for having all the resources in place, or at least with the limited resources, making that work for the benefit of the player. Because the player has to be comfortable, and he has to have access to certain resources, certain infrastructure levels must be at a certain level, if it is that we want to compete with these other countries. And I say that, because of the fact that I've observed what is taking place in our neighboring countries in CONCACAF. When it comes to them having proper infrastructure and resources in place, yes, we tend to think, and I've heard people say this time and time again, that sometimes if you give the players everything too easily, they take it for granted, and they have to go through that struggle and that hardship of being able to train and play on the worst possible pitches. Yes, to some extent, but when you look at what is being put in place for some of these players in the other countries and what our players have to put up with, it's going to be a disadvantage. And it means that our players now, with technology, they are becoming a little more aware of what is available out there and what it should be like. So you can't fool players anymore. You can't fool coaches anymore. They know what the standards are, and it's up to us now to try to at least make an attempt to at least get somewhere close to that. again, Steve, it's ongoing. It's a work in progress. It's not going to happen overnight. And hopefully, as I said, with good results, hopefully, but at least with the right people involved and the efforts that are being made, we can find ourselves heading in that direction. Again, as I mentioned, it's not going to be an easy task. Getting everybody to buy into that common goal and wanting to achieve the same thing, I think that's what we need to get down to right now. If you have that, then you find things are going to fall into place. But if you don't have that sort of common thinking and ambition for the sport, it's not going to happen.
So what are we looking for now for our national team going forward? We have games lined up that we have to play. And
right, so I know right now the FA is in talks with making it possible for our senior men's team to have a training camp in Florida before we head off to Bahamas. We're in talks right now with a couple of teams that we may be able to play in Florida, in Fort Lauderdale, before we head to Bahamas. What is very critical about this particular Nations League series of matches, the 2 matches that we have, Steve, is that we need to top the group to qualify automatically into the CONCACAF Gold Cup. If we come second in the group, we still have a way to get to the Gold Cup, but we'd have to go into a playoff, which is going to be played in Miami, similar to 2021 when Angus was able to get the team past French Guiana on penalty kicks. But it means that it takes a little more energy out of the players, because you now have to play qualifying matches the week before you get into the Gold Cup. It worked out well for us last time because we played Mexico in the opening game and the boys were in a certain momentum, and they had a momentum going, and we were able to draw that match. But I think if we qualify automatically, what will also happen is that it has an effect on our seeding in the CONCACAF. This is going to also affect what World Cup qualifying for us looks like. World Cup qualifying is going to probably start in 2024, the latter part of 2024 for 2026. And based on our performances in 2023, first half of 2024, it's going to determine the seedings and what phase of the qualification we're going to have to start. Whether it be the opening round or we go straight into the knockout phase or the second and third phases. You would have seen as well that CONCACAF announced last week, was it, I think, that the Copa America is now going to be jointly hosted by CONMEBOL and CONCACAF. So the 2024 Copa America is going to take place in the US. 6 teams from CONCACAF are going to be invited to that tournament. So you have a chance now to play against the likes of an Argentina, Colombia, Brazil. And the 6 teams are going to qualify for that tournament based on their seedings and their rankings in this Nations League and Gold Cup. Right. So again, we have to push for that, because it's going to be a fantastic opportunity for us to get into that Copa America. But we have to take care of business on the 24th and the 27th, get into the Gold Cup, go and at least have a decent performance, get out of the group stage at least. And then, right as it is now, this is part of the qualifying campaign and the preparation for that campaign for 2026. Everything that we do now is geared towards that.
We have a lot of optimism now, because it sounds as though we have a lot of things we can be playing for until. And
don't forget that we have the U20 women. We're going to be announcing a national U20 women's head coach in the not too distant future, because they have qualifiers will start in the middle of this year as well. And then the senior women's, their cycle begins again shortly. So we have to start preparing a team now for qualification. The 2023 Women's World Cup takes place in New Zealand, Australia in a few weeks' time. But the cycle now for the next World Cup qualifying and the Women's Gold Cup, etc., that also takes place later this year. So it's a lot of football, a lot of things to look forward to. Then you're talking about not just the youth teams, but you have beach soccer as well. The men's beach soccer qualifiers, Steve, takes place in May in Bahamas.
Right.
That is an easier route to get to a World Cup. Of course, it's beach soccer, but at least it's something that we can aspire to. With the president of the Caribbean Beach Soccer Worldwide Organization, it's now a Trinidadian by the name of Shaun Mohammed, and he wants to do a lot to promote the game in the Caribbean and Trinidad and Tobago as well. We have futsal as well, different forms of football that we have to look forward to.
And so, as head of media and communications now, I mean, we have to get the people
correct
back on our football team back.
So I have my work obviously cut out for me.
So yes.
And I'm hoping that I can have talks with my normalization committee to sort of expand what has been a one-man band so far in terms of a media department.
Right.
Because we want to give other persons an opportunity to experience what it is like to work in football at the top level. I was just recently invited by the Grenada FA to conduct a workshop for their national team, their senior men's team, as well as their staff, because they're preparing to host the United States in their next Nations League match on March 24. That's a huge contest for them because the US are obviously coming off a good performance at the World Cup in Qatar. So I've been able to share my knowledge and experience there, and I want to do the same in Trinidad and Tobago, but it means now that we have to create more opportunities for persons to come into the FA to be able to work with us and learn, because I'm not going to be here forever. So I at least want to be able to pass on some of what I've learned in the game to the next person in line to kind of take football forward for us.
So, well, they have to give you a big staff, man, and let you, spread it out to other countries, just like in football.
Yeah, you're right about that. But again, we're suffering a bit because we don't have exposure or the opportunities to increase that staffing at the Ttfa, financial difficulties and more. But there are ways to make it happen, which we are going to explore over the coming weeks to see. Of course, with the introduction of the league, I'm hopefully going to get more persons to come into the FA to assist from a marketing standpoint. So that's something that we're going to try to obviously mesh now with the operations of the FA for national team football.
I'm looking forward to see you get the whole nation together, coming and supporting, because we need that. We very much need that, and that would hype the guys up to make this happen. I know you can do it, Shaun.
Well, we have done it already, Steve.
Right.
I mean, because despite the fact that football is now being seen as though it's in a hole for the last few years.
Right.
You have to remember, we've hosted World Cup qualifying matches here, that we've sold out venues, we've hosted 2 Youth World Cups, and a lot of this has been done with limited resources as well. I remember a colleague of mine, Kyle Liko, was saying to me, he worked with me a few years ago, he's now working in CONCACAF. He reminded me that in 2015 or early 2016, we hosted St. Vincent in a World Cup qualifier in the Hazy Crawford Stadium, and we sold 18,000 tickets for it.
Right.
And you're talking about being able to generate support and be able to hype the interest among the Trinidad and Tobago faithful for that game. If we could do it for matches like that and not just have to depend on the magnitude of a Mexico to come to draw the crowd, then we can do it on an ongoing basis. All it takes is proper planning and proper execution.
Head to every radio station, every television station, everybody, they have to chip in. Everybody
and they have to be part of it, and they have to understand that what they mean to the entire effort and what they bring to the table. And hopefully we could generate this interest with all the media houses. We have so many radio stations, we have more television stations now. We want to thank you guys as well for being part of this, for having us on your shows and being able to get that message through to the general public. But this has to be an ongoing effort, and hopefully we can sit with the stakeholders, the media, again, they're major stakeholders, and get them to understand what is needed for this.
When they're all trying to inject money into the football and stuff, media and communication, they have to do the same.
Correct.
So make sure that you have your budget or push for it.
Yeah.
I'll come and help you.
I will appreciate that. That would be great. We'll make a good team, I think.
Yeah. Thing. All right. Come to the end now, Shaun. I want to thank you for being here as usual. You always delight me with all the information that I need to know.
Happy to hear that. So that's good, Steve.
I appreciate you so much. Viewers, thank you for tuning in every Monday night. We at 8 o'clock. We do have a Facebook page. I said Monday night, viewers, but it's Tuesday. Okay, oh Lord. Thank you for tuning in. We do have a Facebook page. You can check us out. We do have an email address, feelofdreamtt@gmail.com. You can drop us a line. This show has ended. Go in peace. My name is Steve David. Good night.